We're coming to the end of the current console generation. The end of a whole cycle of games. New IPs, new creative ideas, new studios popping up. So why can I not get the Souls games out of my head still? I've been writing about games for the best part of a decade now, and the thing that I keep coming back to the most are shitty Dark Souls clones. And I don't say coming back to as in, oh, I want to play Code Vein or or Lords of the Fallen. I'm thinking about them because no matter when I sit down to play one, or when I'm trying to review something, or when I'm trying to, write a guide for something, I don't generally enjoy it, and I want to know why. So this video is going to be a little exercise in thought. It's going to be thinking about what has happened over the last 10 years to make Souls a genre unto its own, and what makes that genre itself, and how you can define those things which make a Souls game or a Souls-like game one of those things. Because I think that the idea or feeling of playing a Souls game is not there too limited to playing a third-person action game with an open-world element. I think it goes way deeper than that, and it goes to, your relationship with playing the game, how it feels to play the game, reactionaries and things like that. So I guess where to start is with Demon's Souls, and I'm not going to regurgitate anything that everyone else has said better than me and before, but Demon's Souls was the real revelation here. And as much as people like to say it's Dark Souls, it's really not. Dark Souls was half-baked at best, but managed to define an entire generation of games otherwise. But Demon's Souls is really where that genre started to lay its foundations, and I'd argue that in Demon's Souls you see the core of all of these, you see the core of the genre really. So we're talking about things like the Nexus, which is your main hub, how you interact with NPCs and why, how these NPCs trigger. So, I'm thinking like Mephistopheles. So when you have pure black character tendency, Mephistopheles appears in your Nexus and asks you to go around and kill all the nice friendly guys in the Nexus. So I think that is a massive part of the Souls games, and it's the mystery of playing one, really, that I find to be the most exciting thing. When you get to Yahar'gul Ghul in Bloodborne, when you're, just bagged up and taken to a prison, these are things that surprise you, things that the player doesn't expect, and more so aren't telegraphed by the game. So I want to mark that down and put it in an envelope and push it away for a second, because the second thing that makes these Souls games so special is the moment-to-moment of it. It's not just about the mood. It's about actually interacting with the world, and how you interact with the world is through the combat. The combat is always heavy, deliberate, precise, and I feel like we've seen a really good curve in progression as to how that combat system works by looking at certain markers from within the genre over the last 10 years. So if we take Demon's Souls as a, this is the archetype kind of thing. You've got your slow swings, you've got your tight corridors, you've got your enemy placements, and that's what makes that combat tick, essentially. That is the very bare bones. And then when we played Dark Souls, it added a drop, it added a jump attack. So now we're starting to interact with the world a little bit more, where we're talking like more verticality in the world to accommodate for those new actions. And then we get to Bloodborne, which is a bit speedier, it's a bit faster, you're more aggressive, you're recharging your health as you go along. And finally we have Sekiro, which is, I feel, the natural conclusion to this style of combat. And one thing that's really interesting about the combat in these games, in comparison to how I just described another essential element of what I feel the games are, which is the mystery and the world of the NPCs, is that we haven't really seen a progression of how you interact with the NPCs and the world in the Souls games. It's always been this sort of mystical thing, like this. I always remember when I teamed up with my friend We were playing Bloodborne together. It just came out. We were super late in the game, and we were figuring out how to get the true ending. And I gave up and I said, "Hey, we're gonna have to kill the fucking baby, because that's wild, isn't it? You don't know that the baby's gonna drop a certain item, but you do it. You know, I'm sure you can get it other ways, and I've only played Bloodborne twice, so." But that's my story of how I got it, and it's those discoveries which make these games tick. And I've talked about Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Sekiro already, and that is just a testament to how quickly From Software has iterated on this genre that it's created. 2009 Demon Souls, 2011 Dark Souls, 2014 Dark Souls 2, 2015 Bloodborne, 2016 Dark Souls 3, and then 2019 with Sekiro. So this is a span of 10 years here in which these teams have had some time to take the core of what made Demon Souls so great and extrapolate it further. That's why Dark Souls 2 is probably one of the most creative entries into this whole thing, because it wasn't directed by Miyazaki, and a lot of people push it off to the side because of that, but it actually does a whole host of other interesting things, while still definitely being a Souls game in the same way that Demon Souls is, that Dark Souls 3 is, that, Sekiro is as well. So it's really interesting, because you've got this whole lineup of games that have come out in the last 10 years, and while that was happening, you're seeing the imitators start to come out as well. So I think the first one that I played was Lords of the Fallen, I think in 2014, but I really think that if you want to really go back to where the influence started really shaping shipped games, it was Dragon's Dogma. Because when you played Dragon's Dogma originally, there were clearly a lot of things that were influenced by Dark Souls. So, things like the enemy scaling and, your HP descending and the way that you had to originally traverse the world. I think maybe they took notes off of Dark Souls, They've changed a lot of that since then. But that's, I think, was the first game that really took elements from Dark Souls and played with them, but while not being a direct rip-off. Something like Lords of the Fallen and the Surge, they take these templates, these formulas, but they don't really nail other aspects. So things like getting Mephistopheles in the Nexus, like I said before, I think that's a really cool moment, or going to Yargul, and I think that's a really cool moment, and none of those things happen in Lords of the Fallen. I think the way in which these Souls imitators fall down at certain points depends on the game itself. So, I think Nioh is great. I really enjoyed the combat. They really have that connection to the world and the map design and encounter design that I really enjoyed playing when I played it. But I don't think they quite managed to get the same atmosphere or memorability or even art design as the Souls game managed to achieve. Ashen, I'm sure it's great. I've played about 20 minutes of it, but I literally cannot bring myself to play anymore. Because when I pop it open, I'm like, oh, this is quite cute. I just immediately get bored, because why play an imitator when you can play the real thing? And unfortunately, because I don't know if this is limited to me or people who just like Souls games in general, but when I fired up Sekiro, I was like, all right, I'm going to play it. I'm going to really enjoy Sekiro. This is a new From Software game. I'm going to love it. It's going to be my next favorite game. Sekiro deviates from the formula quite significantly. Its style of presentation is very different. We're seeing more cutscenes, more, things where we don't directly interact with the world. But I think the thing that is, the most important about this genre which From Software helped to spawn, and the speediness and the cycle of releases that we've seen since it was released, there's a lot of influential aspects to Dark Souls that are carried through in games that you see everywhere. The asynchronous co-op and things like that. It's really interesting to see the impact of Dark Souls and how it has affected, you know, the nature of the games industry. But ultimately, where it goes next is where I'm most fearful, because we see From Software go swing all the way back to the high fantasy genre with Elden Ring, and you know, based on rumors that are coming out about the game, it seems to be another one of those, and I'm sure it'll be great, but I'm not sure. I'm hesitant, because I'm going to go back to a design interview that Hidetaka Miyazaki had upon the release of Dark Souls, in which he stated that he doesn't want to make games that feel like they've been popped out of the games industry's mold. So what happens when your game becomes the mold? What happens when you keep iterating on that thing, and then suddenly you see, you know, a game developer with hundreds of millions of dollars make a clone of Dark Souls and slap Star Wars on it? What do you do then? What do you do when they straight up imitate Blighttown, or, you know, the swamp levels in general? You need to do something different. You need to push that boat out in the same way that Demon's Souls did. And while I doubt that will happen, if any developer can do it, it's From Software. I just want to add a few notes about other Souls imitators, as I feel like I might have been unfair. Nioh is a fantastic game. It's probably the only one that even comes remotely close to aping what Dark Souls does. Or the Souls series. I don't know how to define this cluster of games. It's the one that comes closest to what it does. I think the most egregious one is Code Vein, because while it takes all those elements, it just turns you off at every waking moment. It's ridiculous. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do when the entire games industry starts copying what you did, who starts taking notes from your homework? It's hard to understand. And it's difficult to understand how you can revamp your thinking in order to become one step ahead of those who are looking to imitate you. And even, I think, with Sekiro, it was a clear departure from that formula. But that doubles down on why I am so worried about Elden Ring. Because if they go back to those roots, and if what we're hearing, you know, it has horseback riding, it has this, it has that, and I don't know how Elden Ring is going to turn out. I can't answer that for you. But what I can say, as someone who loves the genre, who knows it inside out, I'm worried for Elden Ring. And I'm worried that From Software are going to play it too safe, and it's going to be another one of those.